Hey, there, it's me, Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access. Link in the comment, thanks. On to the kitchen, Annie. I brought the groceries last night, so it's a matter of finding the pans and utensils I need. The menu is Mexican. If you didn't have that one figured out, you don't know me well. Pico de gallo. I make mine without jalapenos, so it's a flavor contrast to the spicier stuff. Guacamole, salad, chili, and chili rellenos should do nicely. I began chopping veggies. Mr. Jones, the Holding family dog, watches me eagerly. The large, drooling creature has very eclectic tastes. He gobbles up the cucumber peels and green pepper innards that I toss him. I know from past experience that he also loves potato peels. I wonder how he would do with a piece of poblano pepper. As I slice them and get ready to parboil them, I evilly try him on a piece, but he turns his nose up. Smart dog. Poblanos aren't as hot as jalapenos, but they can zing you. I don't stuff and deep fry the poblanos to make the chili rellenos. I lay them sliced flat in a baking dish, and put the seasoned meat and cheese layers on top, sort of like a Mexican lasagna. I love cooking, and I'm glad my mom taught me how. Most of my friends, male and female, can pull stuff out of the refrigerator and zap it in the microwave, and that's about it. I haven't coordinated many entire dinners like this, but everything seems to be simmering on schedule. This is the first time for me to cook a dinner as Annie, and it's fun looking down at my skirt or nails and seeing myself as the busy little housewife. At least I don't have pearls and high heels on, like June Cleaver on the Nick reruns. For some reason, while all by myself, becoming Annie again and cooking, it just seemed right to use present tense. It was so immediate, so personal. So now I'll go back to the historical record mode. About 2:30, the dog barked and the garage door opened. I opened the door into the garage to see Mrs. Holding, Sarah, Julie, and Karen all climb out of the minivan. One of my flip-flops fell off and I nearly tripped over the dog as I ran to hug and kiss Sarah, a big hug and a long kiss. Julie and Karen were laughing hysterically. What's so funny? I grinned. Haven't you ever seen two engaged people kiss before? You two are so funny, that's what, Julie laughed. Just because Karen and I are such good friends and hang out together and work well on the court together, people assume we're lesbians. You're not. I'm disappointed, Sarah said, with a fake surprised look on her face. By this time, we're all in hysterics except for Mrs. Holding, who seems to be having deep reservations about having ever chosen motherhood. Bratty kid's sister, Julie answered. As I was saying, they call us lesbians, and the first thing we see is two broads making out in the garage. In front of company, yet. So we kissed again. Karen's leaning on the minivan, laughing with an African accent, if that's possible, tears running down her face. She got up, walked over to me, and put her hands on my shoulder. I looked up. I had to, since she was a head taller than I was. Annie. It's so good to see you again, she said. And to think that you spent that whole weekend with us on campus and I didn't know you were Mark, and I visited here and met Mark and didn't know he was Annie, but now I know you both, and you're both crazy. With that, she hugged me tight. Hello, Karen, I stammered when I came up for air. I think I gotta go stir my chili. I turned to dash off for the kitchen. After checking, I went out to the garage to help unload, but most of it was already done. As I helped carry a duffel in, I heard Sarah whisper to her sister, I wish you two were lesbian lovers, actually, because Karen's so neat I'd like to have in our lives forever. Julie whispered back. You're just trying to get me to say one way or the other, aren't you? I'll never tell, you snoopy little thing. I gave them a quick tour of the kitchen and preview of coming attractions. Later, as Julie and Karen were settling in, Sarah and I set the table. I carried from the cupboards, and she set stuff on. It was a fun trip, she said. And Roberta's going home in a few days. She really pouted that you weren't there, Annie. I sat down the plates. Will she be home already by the time we go to visit Westview? I asked. They're not sure. They think maybe so. But her mom gave us their address and told us to come by their apartment if they did. I don't think she'll be ready for bike lessons, though. Sarah continued to give me updates from their trip. I understand that Julie and Karen are getting a lot of varsity playing time and may earn varsity letters as a freshman, she announced. I can believe it, I said. Karen came into the dining room, ducking slightly to get through the door. Her hair was piled up on her head, bound with an orange cloth, making her look even taller. So, Annie, she said, pitching in to help set out the silver. Are you eventually going to stay a girl, or are you just going to play a girl? She asked, in a teasing tone. I smiled at her. Details at 11, I said. I'll explain more after supper. Even when I saw that email message and she explained to me how Mark came to be Annie, she pondered, I thought it was just another of her elaborate jokes, that she was just leading me on. Nope, no joke, I replied. There's a fully functioning teenaged man under here. I lifted a corner of my wig. Excuse me, Karen. I have to go change for supper. I went up to Julie's room and knocked. She let me in. I gathered my makeup and my razor and went to the bathroom to clean off my face, shave, and redo my face. This time I took a little more care, especially around my eyes. Then, back to Julie's room, I took off the denim skirt, tee, white shoes and tennies, and put on knee-high hose and flats. As I slipped the blue knit dress over my frame, Julie decided to wear her matching green one, and called down the stairs for Sarah to wear hers. Julie helped me attach a thin gold chain around my neck. A door closed downstairs. As I started down, I saw Mr. Holding. He looked at me, just smiled and shook his head slowly. Hi, Annie, he said. I'll have to admit that your supper smells great. Julie followed me down and went into Sarah's room to help her finish dressing. When they came out, we all stood together and went to Karen's delight. It was the same outfits we wore New Year's Eve when the trouble started, but tonight we were all dressed a little more carefully and thoroughly. Last time it was a spur of the moment. Tonight, we looked really classy. The doorbell rang and we greeted my folks. You look lovely tonight, girls, Mom said. I joined Sarah, Julie, and Karen in thanking her. Dad's lips tightened, but he said hello to everyone, including one to me as Annie. I asked Julie and Karen to help me bring dinner in. After Mr. Holding offered a blessing, we dug in. Everybody praised the food, and I have to admit it was really good. I got a few teasing comments about making Sarah Beth a good little wife, and I just laughed them off. We cleaned off the dishes and went to the living room. It was time. Suppose you're wondering why I called this meeting. Like all of you last June, I thought Annie would be around for 6 weeks to help Sarah Beth make it through her treatment, and then would just disappear. But life isn't that simple, I guess. Annie made friends, like Roger, Roberta, Kelly, and some others. And I guess that I got so used to being Annie, I didn't want to give her up either. Neither did I, Sarah added. I guess I kinda bonded with Annie. I've loved Mark as a boyfriend for a long time, but Annie was the only girlfriend who stuck with me through the bad times last summer. I still love Mark as Mark, but I also love who Mark is as Annie. Even though I'm not so lonely for girlfriends anymore, Annie is special, and I love being with her. She's a great cook, too, she grinned. Before last summer, I continued, I never had any strong interest in wearing women's clothes or fantasies about being a girl. Maybe a few moments of curiosity, but no real urges or anything. But now it seems to be a part of my life, not just being a girl, but being Annie. I've been doing some research on the web. I guess I have to call myself transgendered. Dad winced. I'm not transsexual, though. I don't want to live full-time as a woman, or get surgery to become one, or anything like that. I guess I'm a crossdresser. Well, duh, that's kind of obvious, isn't it? I grinned. But it's not like putting on women's clothes is a fetish for me. It isn't a big sexual turn-on. If it was, I'd have gone crazy those 6 weeks last summer. That's what we're concerned about, my dad muttered. I've talked with a minister about it, and a counselor, Dad, I told them, and they say I'm not. I've developed a side of my personality that I like, and I express it through Annie. I don't just dress up as a woman, I live in the role of Annie. When I do that, it brings me happiness. I feel good. I like Annie. That doesn't mean that I don't like Mark, or that when I'm in my Annie role I forget who I really am. It's not a split personality, or anything. It's just my feminine side expressing itself. Sarah entered the conversation again. When we were at Hope Haven together, maybe I became too dependent upon Annie. But she was always there for me. I knew it was Mark under there, but in another way, it was Annie I cuddled up to when I felt miserable and ugly. It was Annie's blue nails I would see as her hands would hold on to mine when I was afraid I might die, and when I was afraid I might live. It was Annie's gentle encouragement that helped me walk again. It was Annie who never took advantage of me when I was weak and vulnerable. I know it was Mark underneath, but what I saw was Annie. And I just couldn't turn off my feelings about Annie when we came home. Like I said, we bonded. If Mark doesn't mind, I want Annie to be with me for a long time to come. Mr. and Mrs. Holding, you can blame it on me, if you think your son is doing something wrong. I'm sorry if you do, but your son is such a beautiful person that I guess one gender just can't hold him. She started to sniffle and sob. I reached my arm around her shoulders. I was getting weepy, too, and so was Julia, and so was Karen. Maybe our moms, as well. Please subscribe for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.